Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to recap a movie called Lucy. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Movie starts with a voice explaining the importance of life and how humans waste it. We see our main protagonist Lucy, in front of a hotel with a guy named Richard, who is convincing her to go in the hotel and hand over a case to a guy named Mr. Jang. Lucy is not complacent at first, but Richard persuades her by splitting the profit which he was going to make from this delivery to be splitted 50-50 within him and her. When Lucy asks what was in the briefcase, he points out that they are just some paperworks, but Lucy, being spectacle still, was refusing. Richard takes out a handcuff and places them on her hand with the suitcase attached to it. Seeing no other way out, she reluctantly goes in and asks for Mr. Jang at the reception. We see a monologue of a tiger attacking a deer, representing the situation that Lucy finds herself into. Some men appeared from the lift and we see Richard getting shot and Lucy being taken forcefully to Mr. Jang. She started to panic after seeing the horrible sight in front of her. She was forcefully taken to a hotel room. In the hotel room we see Mr. Jang appear from an adjacent room covered in blood, which seemed to be of some men that he killed in the room. Being extremely frightened, she tried to communicate with Mr. Jang in different languages but gets nothing out of him. Mr. Jang calmly sat in front of her and calls up a translator on the phone while talking on speaker. The translator helps them to communicate back and forth. After Lucy explained Mr. Jang how she got the case from Richard and how she was tricked into the delivery. Mr. Jang looks annoyed and gave her the code to open it, saying he did not trusted Richard one bit and she has to open it. Lucy opens the case and narrates the contents inside the case to Mr. Jang, which seems to be 4 pouches containing some sort of blue powder in them. After listening this, Mr. Jang ordered his men to bring an addict in the room who would test the product for him. The man snorts the blue stuff and starts laughing hysterically, which irritates Mr. Jang, and he shoots him on point blank. After shooting the man, Mr. Jang tries to offer Lucy a job, but Lucy rejects it, being frightened from everything a lot. One of Mr. Jang's men hits Lucy and she became unconscious. The scene cuts to 1% being displayed on the screen, and then we see a professor giving a lecture in a university explaining how human evolved from being a tiny cell to a human, and with time how human brain also started to evolve. How we as humans started from using 1% of our brain to only 10%, which seems to be the limit of the human race as we see it now. He further demonstrated how dolphins can use 20% of their brains and how they have developed a sonar system which helps them to navigate. Moving forward, we see Lucy waking up in the hotel room with a bandage on her stomach. Some men arrive and take her to the hall where Mr. Jang was sitting on a sofa, and we see more people with similar stitches arrive in the room later on. The doctor in the room there explains how they are having that blue stuff, which was the new drug known as CPH4, inside their stomach, which they needed to smuggle to Europe. They were handed out the flight tickets with their passports. After explaining what would happen to their families if they failed to do the delivery or get caught, they were sent out. The scene cuts and we see the professor continuing the lecture, telling how our aim as humans is gaining time. He further explains how the cells in our body has the same purpose and how there are 2 ways that can happen, depending on some conditions attached for the cell to survive. The conditions being, number 1, if the habitat for the cell was not sufficiently favorable or nurturing, the cell chooses to be immortal, that means being self-sufficient. Number 2, on the latter, if the habitat was favorable, it chooses to reproduce, transferring the knowledge to the next cell in the process. The scene shifts to Lucy being chained to a wall in a closed room with 2 men speaking Mandarin in front of her. One of the men tried to fool around with her, but Lucy jerked him off. This pissed the man, which made him angry, and he started to kick her in the stomach and hurting her. The other man grabs him and takes him out of the room. Because of the beating, the pouch inside Lucy's stomach bursts and the CPH4 starts to mix with her blood, and she started to fly around the room with a severe pain in her stomach. After the drug settled, we see the words 20% flashing on the screen. We saw Lucy suddenly calms down and became confident instead of being frightened anymore. She sat on the chair and waited for the man to return, very patiently hearing for the footsteps. After the man returned, she kills him and freed herself. She started to move out of the room with his gun. She kills others outside and takes a cab to the hospital, where she analyzes the patient's chart currently being operated on the operation table and killed him with the gun instantly, ordering the doctor to operate on her now, as the man on the bed was going to die anyway. She ordered the doctor to take the bag of drug out of her. She used doctor's cell phone to call her mom and explained how she can feel every small and big detail around her vividly, such as the rotation of the Earth, the air molecules around her, her brain neurons talking to each other via electrical impulses, her deepest memories, and much more. She further goes on explaining how she remembers the Simmons cat when she was 1 year old, and also the taste of her mother's milk in her mouth, to which her mother gets astonished. Doctor pulls out the bag from her stomach safely. Lucy asked if he knew anything about the CPH4 drug, to which he explained her how pregnant women manufacture CPH4 in their bodies in the 6th month of pregnancy in a very short amount, which gives the explosive power needed for the baby to develop its bones. He further states that this much quantity of CPH4 should have killed her by now, and it was a miracle that she was still alive. The scene cuts and we saw Lucy killing Mr. Zhang's men and entering the room where he was relaxing. She puts 2 knives in his feet and interrogated him about the other people carrying the package. Mr. Zhang was experiencing severe pain from the knives inserted in his both feet and was not able to comprehend anything. Without wasting any further time, Lucy extracted the information directly from his brain and thanked him for his help, leaving him in pain. The scene shifts and we see Lucy arriving at her apartment, working on the laptop reading about the research done on the brain by Professor Samuel Norman, who was the same person that we saw who gave speech on the university campus. She dialed the professor and explained how she had read each and every page of his research and also assured him how he was on the right track until then. She further explained how she is currently using 28% of her brain's cerebral capacity and how because of that access, she was able to control different electronic and magnetic waves around her. She also explained how she was not feeling any fear, pain or anything that makes them human. She only had a lot of knowledge which was now accumulated in her brain which she can access and don't know what to do with it, to which Samuel suggested her to transfer the knowledge, similar to any cell which would do the same for it to keep on existing. Lucy accepted the solution and informed the professor that she would be at his door in about 12 hours and the call disconnects. She was a wanted criminal now, with her photo getting more attention than ever. She was on every news channel in Korea. To hide from the public, she changed her hair by the skill that she was able to access, evolving them to a black color with long hairs rather than the blonde short one in an instant on command. She called a detective named Pierre Del Rio in Paris and told him all the information about the drug traffickers and how he needed to catch them and retrieve the drug that they are carrying. The phone disconnects and we see different drug traffickers getting caught on the airports of different countries simultaneously and then getting transported back to France, where Lucy was headed already, to meet the professor. Moving forward, we see Lucy's cell choosing the path of immortality and she starts to come apart and dissolve in thin air. To prevent this from happening, she takes the rest of the CPH4 and the scene cuts to Lucy waking up in a hospital in France with different new powers, such as X-ray vision. After waking up, the nurse informs the doctor the same, which astonishes the staff as she recovered very fast, faster than expected. Detective and his fellow officers with all the hospital staff present there, try to stop her, but in the very next instant, they all fell unconsciously on the floor except the detective, to whom she orders to take her to wherever the drugs are stored. Detective reluctantly agrees to take her, and they sit in their car. Lucy, being able to manipulate electromagnetic and radio waves, intercept the call between Mr. Zhang and the henchman that worked for him and was spying currently on the drugs that were inside those 3 people that Lucy helped catching. In the call, Mr. Zhang ordered the henchman to extract the package of drugs from those people at any cost. He agrees, and started barging forcefully into the hospital where those men were taken, to extract the drugs from their bodies. He was successful in extracting 2 packages, but Lucy reaches there on time after driving very expertly, although wreaking havoc on her way in the whole city. Seeing Lucy, the men tries to attack her by pointing their guns at her, but she makes the roof a magnet, and all their guns got pulled towards the ceiling. The men started to crumble one by one on the floor as the main henchman, who had the suitcase with the drugs with him, pauses, and hands it over to Lucy against his will. Lucy extracts the last package from the dead men's body, and both her and the detective started traveling towards Professor Samuel. Moving forward, we see Lucy introducing herself to the team of top scientists that Professor Samuel had gathered for the study. On the other hand, Mr. Zhang and the henchmen tracked Lucy and gathered their men to attack her. They reached the venue with guns and started searching for her. Lucy tells the detective to hold them off so that she can finish her business with the professor in peace. Professor Samuel and the other specialists starts their questioning, and Lucy gave them the answers, explaining how time is the only unique form of unit which makes the whole world exist. She further asks them to pour the rest of CPH4 to her bloodstream, so that the last few percent of her brain can be accessed by her, as the remaining cells will fight till the very end to protect their integrity, and in order to force them she needed to inject the rest of the CPH4 in her bloodstream. Scene cuts to the fight that started between Mr. Zhang's gang and the law enforcement officers. We see Detective and the other officers shooting and fighting to protect the gangsters to enter the vicinity. After all the 3 bags were emptied, we see Lucy starts to extend something from her body, a black substance which starts to engulf anything and everything that it finds around her. Professor explains that she was trying to absorb matter and energy around her, and also trying to connect to the computers. After engulfing everything, the whole place suddenly turns white, and we see a new generation computer getting built in thin air. With the war still going outside the room, somebody fires a bazooka at the door, and from the blast we see a montage of Lucy, traveling back and forth in time, from the present, gradually going backwards to the very beginning of mankind, before evolution occurred, going further back even before the Big Bang. While seeing all this and traveling, she was still seated on the same chair. We see Mr. Zhang slowly appearing from the back with a gun aimed to the back of her head, but when he shoots the gun, Lucy disappears, and the detective shoots Mr. Zhang with the gun. The computer formed in front started to move, and produces a pen drive, which as soon as the professor took out from the slot, the computer just evaporates, leaving the pen drive behind. The detective asks them where is she, to which his phone beeps with a message, I am everywhere. And the movie ends. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.